Now recording.
Good morning. I'm Dan Tupper, District 3 Commissioner and President of the Board. This is a special meeting of the Jefferson County PUD Board of Commissioners. It's Friday, December 18th, 2020. It's 9:01 a.m. Per the Governor's Extended Proclamation 2028, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Jefferson County PUD is no longer providing an in-person room for meetings of the BOC. All meetings will be held remotely via WebEx until otherwise informed by the Governor. Participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. If you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute. With that, I would ask for introductions of the commissioners to determine a quorum.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Jeff Randall, Commissioner, District 1.
So we're all present. We have a full board. With that, we'll move on to item 2, which is the agenda review. We have an executive session today for the review of an employee's performance. We have a couple presentations and some attached resolutions. Are there any changes, additions, or corrections? Kevin, I see a hand waving.
So depending on the length of the meeting, we may not do the executive session. I know there's a crunch for time. So, we could decide now not to do the executive session, but the meeting was set up, and with the time issues, it may be better to do something either next week or the week before.
Well, I think it's kind of in your ballpark here, because I don't know how long or we would need it or what we were exactly going to cover. So I guess I'll leave it up to your discretion.
So quick question for Joel. This is Jeff. Can we just do the best we can, and then if we don't make it to the agenda at the stop time, can we continue the meeting to another date?
Yeah, Jeff, I think that's a good way to do it. Let's just hold off, and then what we'll do is, rather than call a new special meeting, the next one will be the continuation of this one for the purposes of having an executive session to review a public employee. So I agree with that.
Are we in agreement then? We'll just roll along here and make that decision later. I see one head nodding and a thumb up.
Yep,
Okay.
I think that's the way to go, Dan.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So with that, I entertain a motion. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and
Second the
seconded to
motion,
accept
yep.
the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? Okay, well, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The
Aye.
agenda, I think I heard Jeff say yes. Yep. So we're going to accept the agenda as presented. Motion passes. With that, we will move on to resolutions. Item 3.1, poll attachment.
I will start. We've had a couple BOC meetings specific to poll attachments. We talked about it at our regular meeting in December. And what we got from the commissioners at that meeting is, instead of splitting the new increase 3/4, 1/4 for up to 2022 year frame, we would go half and half. So roughly it took the first year down to $16.45, and then the following year it went up to the $22 range. So it just basically cut everything in half. And then it does call for a review in 2022 to see how to move things forward. A lot of this was done by Joel and Don Cohen, trying to make sure we're complying to what the state gave everyone based on the Pacific lawsuit. Joel, do you want to kind of bring things up to speed on that side?
Sure. So we're bringing this back for final review and hopefully approval by the commission on the rates. After our last discussion, as Kevin said, the commissioners felt that the first jump in 2021 was a little too much to swallow. So we reduced that, evened it out. And, the commission has reviewed this, I think, 3 different times, and today would be the 4th. And the question is whether you think these proposed rates, as Kevin and FCF have presented to you, are fair and reasonable and consistent. And I think the resolution before you indicates, as we've also indicated in the past, that the actual calculation per the statute and Court of Appeals case is $33.89, fully loaded rate. So you are able to raise rates up to that point and be consistent with the statute, but you have full authority to set the rates up into that, which I think that's what the last discussion is. So let me know if you have any questions, but it's before you after significant review and consideration by both staff and the commission.
This is Commissioner Tupper. So my question probably is for Kevin. I'm not going to hash over the way we split out the first 2 years. I think that discussion is pretty well settled. But I think in retrospect, I probably should have asked this question sooner. I realize that the pole attachment costs are only a certain percentage, of our overall cost of service on our infrastructure. We have tree trimming, pole inspections, emergency repairs, pole replacements, those type of things that, I don't know what proportion those users are calculated using the calculations to determine this 33.80 something fee. But it seems to me that we're leaving a pretty big gap between that number that was determined through the state calculating formula, even after the second year of this increase. So my question really is, are we catching up? Because there hasn't been an increase since we took over the power in 2013. And we know labor costs have gone up quite a bit just alone in that particular issue. So are we catching up, keeping up, or are we getting to our actual cost with these 2 proposed increases if we're really able to get $34? That still leaves a pretty big gap to me. It seems like that's the kind of the number we should be looking at to meet our cost of service without, for these particular businesses who really ultimately, they pass these on to their consumers. We have to look at ourselves. We're a not-for-profit, but we're also not for taking losses or subsidizing either. So that's my question to Kevin. Are you comfortable that these rates are going to put us where we need to be? Are we still looking at some major increases, already after those 2 years?
So Dan, based on what the presentations, FCS and working with others, I believe we're on the right path. I believe we do need to increase our rates. You're correct. We charge $12.45 per pole attachment, and that is way too low. I do think we need to raise things slowly and bring it up to a number that better represents the total cost the PUD has in it. But as staff, we're okay with saying, okay, we'll start slowly raising these and hit the mark in future years. I think in 2020, when we relook at the rates, we can at that time maybe see if we stifled some construction. If we did, maybe we raise slower. If we haven't stifled construction, maybe we go a little more aggressive. But I think for today and where we're at, we're making a very positive step forward. But you are correct, Dan. We have to continue to look at this, and I see we will raise in the future these numbers also.
I mean, one of the concerns for me is, we're doing a cost of service study, and it's becoming more and more obvious. It would appear that we're looking at electric rate increases. So this is just one part of other things that are, going to cause us to possibly have rate increases. And I think we need to be really mindful that, we need to make it communicated that we're working on this and we understand, that there's a discrepancy here of us getting to where we need to be as we talk about rates. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Dan, I would say one thing. During outages and stuff like that, where we lose a pole or things like that happen, it is not the PUD's responsibility to put their infrastructure back up. A lot of times what we do is we'll make it safe. We'll tie it to our pole, so the cars and traffic can get through. But we don't perform the maintenance to put their system back in the air and get them back up and running. We're only responsible for our equipment, our wires, our stuff. So some of the maintenance costs I think you were talking about, we don't absorb during a storm or those things. We just get it back up. I hope that clarifies a little bit to the people here.
Yeah, I appreciate the level of detail, Kevin. I think that's what we need to do is we need to communicate just what exactly, who's responsible for what as we look at these rates and our electric rates in general. Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. So I don't have that visual table in front of me that FCS presented, but what was the maximum that, I realize there's the statutory maximum, but then what was the maximum that FCS said, this is your full cost per attachment for allowing someone to use your pole? What was that number?
It's $33.89, Jeff.
$33.89. And then the top number that we're going to after the second year, what's that number again?
$22.45. See, it's a pretty good discrepancy between those two numbers.
Yeah, I hear you. And I remember the chart that they prepared that showed the current situation on pole attachment rates, and the new rate kind of puts us in the middle of the PUDs. And I do recall this discussion from last time, Dan, so I just wanted to get those numbers in my head. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So go ahead. I'll throw it back to Commissioner Collins. Do you have anything, or do we want to go back to Kevin with this? Or
No, I'm comfortable with the proposal from staff. I think this bears looking at 1 year, 2 years from now to see whether we need to make an adjustment. And if I'm recalling correctly, the information provided by FCS was based on the state regulatory formula. And did we also see the actual cost of service calculated?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Ken.
So I do recall very specifically seeing the calculation based on the state formula of what is allowable. What I'm asking is, did we also see a calculation from FCS that was specific to Jefferson PUD's actual cost of service?
Yes, if I understand things right, they took our costs, the poles, the height of our poles and that was in part of the formula. So I believe, if I understand the question right, it has our costs in there as part of the state formula. We used our costs.
Okay, I'm comfortable moving on. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Kevin. So before we move on to the resolution, I think I'll ask the question, is there anyone from the public who wants to comment at this point? I don't know if we have anybody on from the public, but I will take any public comment at this point.
Dan, there are no members of the public on this call.
All right, thank you, Will. So with that, I guess we'll move on to the resolution itself. Resolution number 20-025. Is that, no, that's not correct, is it? What was the correct, is it 26? Which one is it, 25 or 26? Unfortunately, I have two copies in front of me.
It's 025.
025. So, and it's a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Jefferson County Utility District Number 1 of Washington, revising pole attachment rates pursuant to RCW 54.04.045. I would entertain a motion to accept the resolution as presented.
So moved.
I'll second it in case Jeff's having trouble. So I'll just go ahead and second it. So is there any other discussion on resolution 20-025?
I would like to say one thing, Dan.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. I totally hear you where you're coming from on we shouldn't allow a gap between our full costs and the new rate. But I'm cognizant of a couple of things. One, by the time we get to the second year, we will almost have doubled the rates from what they are, even if they're significantly too low. And the second issue for me is just the lack of service that we have in our county with various communication companies. And I don't want to be sending the message that we're trying to throw up barriers to them using our poles to extend their service for our customers. So I believe that we're significantly increasing it, and when we get to that second year, if everybody else is moving up too, and these rates are not a barrier to expansion of the ISPs and other things, then I would totally be open to raising them further to get closer to the true cost if I'm still on the board at that point. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adopting resolution number 20-025, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Resolution is adopted. With that, we will move on to item 3.2, the voiding of the 2018-2019 warrants.
So I'll go ahead and jump in here. This is Mike. So this was presented at the last regular board meeting in December here. There was a little confusion on it. With using Jefferson County Treasurer's Office as our treasurer, they do require a board resolution to void warrants that are over a year old that are still outstanding. So this is just authorizing the Treasurer's Office and staff to go ahead and void those checks. They will eventually, the money gets sent to the state as unclaimed money. So there's really nothing impact to ours. We're just cleaning up old warrants. So just looking, we've got the 19 checks now 19 warrants listed as long as the 18. So just looking for board approval to get those, to have the Treasurer's Office void them in their system, and then we'll void them in our system as well.
Thanks, Mike. It's Commissioner Tupper. So I have one question on your cover sheet under fiscal impact. It says cash fund balance will increase as we will add the amount of the warrants back into cash account balance. So could you elaborate, just so it's on the record, as to what exactly that means? Is there going to be actually more money in our account, or has this money been written off already? What exactly is the process, and how does it affect the financials?
So there will be some when we void the checks, because we already take the money out of as soon as we cut the checks, the money comes out of our cash accounts on the balance sheet information, not necessarily out of the bank accounts. But we show that we are using that money, so it's not, we don't double dip any of our money. So when we void those checks, it will actually add it back in on the balance sheet, just a journal entry that will do it. But then we do have to send some of that money to the state as unclaimed money, so it will then basically go back out based on that. But when we void the checks, because we take it against our cash account, it will add that money back in because we'll make it look like it never actually happened. Does
Thanks,
that
Mike.
answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted it to make sure that we had been transparent about what exactly the process is. I have no problem with any of what we're doing here. I just want to make sure that we're on the record of describing it in somewhat detail so that there's no confusion.
Okay.
So is there any further discussion on this particular item of the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve resolution number 20-026, A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Public Utility District Number 1 of Jefferson County to authorize the Jefferson County Treasurer to cancel outstanding warrants.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on Resolution 20-026? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. The resolution is adopted. So with that, we will move on to item 4, discussions. 4.1, purchase of property from Jefferson County at 310 Four Corners.
So I will start here and then Scott Bancroft will give you an update. And I apologize to the board. Appeared in the Peninsula Daily as almost a done deal, and we had not talked to the board. So I'm going to give a little background here. Like 4 years ago, when they talked about putting the trails, along the right of way of the transmission, water, telecoms, we started to negotiate with the county at that time. The county came back a couple years later and said, well, they may need some of our property, and they threw out the possibility of doing a swap with what they call the gravel pit. But we said, well, we're not sure about that. Couple years, about a year later, they came back and said, well, we don't need your property, but we need easements to do the things that we need to do. And as part of the purchase, we'll do a swap. We'll let you have this old gravel pit. And really, they call it a pit, but what they did and how they used it is when they were cleaning borrow ditches or doing some road maintenance and stuff, they would bring the spoils and dump them on the property, street sweeping, stuff like that. So it's not a valuable piece of property, but, and Scott will get into this a pinch, but for the PUD, for stormwater, we are maxed out at what can be done at 310 Four Corners because of the surfaces we have. We have gravel, type 2 in all of our surfaces, so we don't have enough pervious soil to do a lot more expansion at 310. This property would be excellent for that, and it would allow us to put more buildings, more usefulness at 310 because we could put stormwater in this area. So again, I apologize that it came out in the paper. We have not really even negotiated with the county other than we don't want to give them the easement without that property tied to it. And so Scott, do you want to bring up a map and talk a little bit? Hey, Scott.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, I just want to give you a little overview of what has been going on, and Kevin covered some of it, but I'm going to go over it again. In July of 2019, the Jefferson County Public Works met with the PUD to discuss the Olympic Discovery Trail. The discussion kind of prompted the Jefferson County Public Works to begin the planning stages of what they would need for an easement across our property to get through with the Olympic Discovery Trail. In October 2019, PUD reps met with Jefferson County Public Works and actually walked the area of the easement that is behind our Irondale substation. We kind of walked it over and got exactly what they wanted to do. During the process of the meetings and the emails, there was a verbal offer made to swap the easement that we would give Jefferson County Public Works for a parcel of land owned by Jefferson County Public Works. That parcel is 001 333013. It is a 1.38 acre parcel located between our operations center and the Four Corners Road, right in front. In the summer of 2020, Jefferson County Public Works sent a written offer to the PUD. The offer was for a cash amount for the easement. They said they basically give us an offer of $18,600 for the easement needed for their Olympic Discovery Trail. PUD countered back with the original verbal offer of the easement for the Jefferson County owned parcel. So they kind of went back and discussed it and talked about it. And in October of 2020, we actually got a letter, basically for us, it was a letter of intent that we would make this deal if this were to happen. And the deal was essentially to swap the easement, which is a total of 2.043 acres on 3 of PUD parcels, and they would swap that, and the fair market appraisal for that was $18,600. The fair market appraisal for the 1.38 acre parcel is $31,300, a difference of $12,700. So Jefferson County came back with an offer that if we paid that $12,700, the valuation difference, they would proceed with the proposal. And they okayed it at their county commissioners meeting in October. And like Kevin said, I apologize for that as well. I didn't know it was going to hit the papers on front page as a done deal. I wasn't expecting that. Maybe, you know, the back page next to the horoscopes, but I wasn't expecting front page coverage of that. But anyway, the transaction was approved by the Jefferson County Board of Commissioners. And as Kevin said, the benefits of the property, I feel the 2 biggest benefits is the new parcel allows for a buffer between a residential area that's across the road and our potential 24-hour industrial operation. We've already had some calls here and there from neighbors about lighting and being able to see, and we've had some issues there. But I think it's a good buffer. We can plant that and get trees growing up in it, so there isn't such an issue there with noise and lighting. The other thing is, as Kevin said, stormwater is a huge deal in this Jefferson County at this time. And right now, our impervious surface is at 33%. And at 35%, we have to do a major, overhaul of our existing stormwater to accommodate. So we're going to have some issues if we plan to expand in the future. And this parcel would be perfect for our stormwater drain system in the future. And that's about it. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Scott. It's Commissioner Tupper. So I guess the question I have, there's 2 issues here. There's the easement side of this, and then there's the property. How closely linked are these 2 issues? Is one a non-starter without the other? Does this have to be a packaged deal? I mean, or I realize there's benefits maybe to doing that or not doing that, but how closely are the 2 linked?
This is a package deal, Dan. We want that piece of property. The Jefferson County Public Works wants that easement for the Olympic Discovery Trail. I think the Olympic Discovery Trail is a valid trail, a valid project that Jefferson County wants to do. They just need a little bit of assistance. And in that assistance, we can give them that easement and we can get some from them as well.
Yeah, I support the trail. I'd like to see it finished, so it's one less thing that everybody in the county has to quit dealing with, and it would be done. That would solve that problem. But having said that, for us, my concerns are, with the easement is liability issues, first and foremost. And on the property ownership, I hear us talking about using it as a stormwater reserve or dissipating or whatever. Is the county going to sign off or do anything to prove that property has no hazardous materials or compounds, and that we'll be able to do what we want to do with it, that's as what was being proposed by staff today? Those are kind of my questions, just the 30,000 foot level. I have even more than that, but that's the 30,000 foot level.
At this time, Dan, we don't know if there's any hazardous materials. Basically, what they've done for the last 5 years is dump their sweeps off the ground. All the spoil from their jobs have gone to this. If a road washes out, they pick it up, throw it in a dump truck, and go to this site and dump it. Now, I don't think there's any significant issues with toxins in that area, but I would really like to see us get this and make it into that stormwater area. We're going to need it.
And the second half of that was permitting. It's one thing to give us the property. It's another one to permit us to do what we want to do with it.
Yeah, you know, that's always up in the air whenever you deal with a county. I don't see where there's going to be a problem with the stormwater as long as we do the stormwater correctly. And there's correct ways of doing it. You have to have a stormwater engineer come in and engineer you an area that would be sufficient for what we need. But yeah, you're right. When you're dealing with Jefferson County with permits, you know, all bets are off.
So this is Jeff. Dan, did you have any more questions?
I was just going to say, I think we definitely have some more follow-up with the negotiations here with staff and the county to maybe answer some of those questions. Go ahead, Jeff.
So, Jeff.
Okay, and that's, go ahead.
Jeff, could I have Joel, because the liability, we've talked to Joel a little bit about this. Can you at least preliminary speak on like liability people on the trail and stuff, Joel?
Sure. I mean, first, I'd like to respond to the question about the materials left on site. You know, we'll account for that in the contract itself, because we have these are all the discussion of the terms. We haven't gotten to the point of the contract where we'll make sure that Jefferson County assumes all of its obligation for, you know, whatever materials were placed on site. And the way the law works is that no matter what, they're responsible for it. So if they placed it on there, they're ultimately responsible to clean it up if there's anything contaminated. In terms of the use of the easement, I mean, the county, again, would hold the legal right for the public, essentially, to cross over the property. And I assume that the easement would reside in ownership by the county, and, you know, they're responsible for maintaining it. I don't know if that's the terms and conditions of it, but I assume that the grant of the easement would include the obligation for them to maintain and operate the easement on behalf of the public. And so, you know, again, if someone gets injured, tries to and sues the county, adds us in, we would just turn it back over to the county for their indemnification and hold us harmless for it, unless the cause of the accident is found to be on behalf of something Jefferson PUD had done. So, you know, that it would be the standard liability regime for these types of easements.
So is it my turn now?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. And that was a good question, Dan. And Joel, thank you for bringing that up. That whole issue of chain of title, I think, is really important for us to understand. And I think Dan's question is a great one. Are we going to be able to use this for stormwater in the future? And I think, Joel, you really answered that. If we're going through the process of doing that, going through the permitting, something comes up about possible contamination, the law on this is that because they were in the chain of title and clearly they were the ones dumping stuff there, especially if we've got protection in the transfer documents, that's going to have to be dealt with by them. So I think that protects us. And then secondly, what I'm hearing Dan saying is we'd like perhaps some guarantee that they would permit us to allow us to have stormwater there. And I just want to bring up, my understanding is that there's a couple different functions of government going on here. One is the property ownership function, which Jefferson County has, and a second future function would be the future permitting of stormwater. And I don't think they're capable, or that we could demand that as part of the transaction that they pre-approve stormwater. It's like us pre-approving some service, you know, that we haven't had a chance to look at yet. So I don't think we can demand that they pre-approve it. But the chain of title thing makes me feel better. And then I think another thing to remember is that the people we're serving, again, are the same people. The people who are going to use the trail are our customers, or the citizens of Jefferson County. And this trail is a big deal. It's really long, and when you look at the continuation through Clallam County, it's a very significant trail system. And I actually walked the trail with the project manager one day, and as we were going up over this very significant topography that it crosses, and I'm not sure where the easements actually are, but this is a complicated trail, and I think they've come up with the least complicated solution to allow the trail to go through. And I've always wondered about that hole in the ground in front of the operations center, and I'm surprised how big it is. But I concur with Scott from my background in land use planning that stormwater can be a real problem when you run into that barrier. And the Port of Port Townsend has found out how expensive stormwater can be. So, you know, this number we're talking about, this cash payout, I think is a really pretty cheap insurance to make sure that we're capable of using that property in the ways we want to. And we have, you know, big plans that we're going to talk more about today about what we'd like to see happening there. So just short answer is I support this, and it sounds like there's more process that's going to take place, and we can be protected as much as possible if we proceed with the transaction. But I support it as it is now for those reasons.
Thanks, Jeff. And you're spot on, you know, with everything you said there. I'm not looking for a written guarantee. I just want us to make sure we do our due diligence and kind of look into what our options really are going to be moving into this. County DCD will have a hand in it. Ecology will when you're talking stormwater. I mean, there's the whole litany of, you know, permits and people will have to go through. That part I understand, but I just want to make sure we do our due diligence to ask the right questions as it's being proposed to us as to what the use of the property in particular. The easement's a different issue in my opinion. So, you know, that I agree with you, Jeff. Ken, anything?
No, I'm fine with the proposal. And I support the resolution.
Does this one have this doesn't have a resolution, does it? This is just right now we're in the stage where we're talking about moving forward, correct?
We have not really started to negotiate with the county. A lot of documents have to change hands, which means they'll send them to us, we'll review them, send them to Joel. Joel's comments will go back to them. I'm sure their attorney will look at them also. So we're really at the very starting spot to get the negotiations going.
Yeah, so I think you have consensus. I heard consensus here from the commissioners that, you know, we want to move forward with the process. We're at 30,000 feet at the moment, and we'll start to get closer. There'll be more finite detail to be discussed, I'm sure.
Yes.
This is helpful and will help frame our negotiations too for what should be in the final agreements.
So is there any further input or discussion on this item 4.1, the purchasing of the property? And I would add the easement issue as well. Is there anything else? Seeing or hearing nothing, I think we will move off that topic and on to 4.2, the joint building for Jefferson EOC costs and options. Little background, I'm assuming we're going to get first.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I was just going to say, I appreciate Don. He's taken the lead on this. We've spent he spent a lot of time between Jeff Com, ELC, and the PUD and the architects to come up with some numbers, some drawings, and just want to shout out to Don. Thank you. He's done a great job as usual on this. And take it away, Don.
So we got time. How much time do we have on this, Kevin?
You can take as long as you need. This is an important one.
So I'm going to give you a little update on the building as well. You know, this year, the new building, this year's kind of been like living through a segment of the Twilight Zone. So we've had lots of challenges. We've got about $3.6 million spent on a $4.2 million budget. I'm going to give you a kind of an example of a short list that is quite a bit longer of things that came up that we had to include that weren't included in the original budget. We have some money in there for the initial bank design and review, and we even took a look at the admin building, if you remember. We had some additional site work. You know, we found water lines and culverts and wiring in the ground there that went nowhere. We never did figure out exactly what that was all about. I fully expected to find a couple of cases of empty beer cans as a result of what we saw there. We had to do some additional work on the mezzanine for access to the systems there and some structural things that we needed to improve that weren't considered. We had some unsuitable soils that we had to fix and correct. We had some additional asphalt work that we needed to do and some repair work, and we put in new parking stall stays and new fencing, additional fencing for security. We had a roof redesign, which we redesigned the structure, the systems, the data, electrical systems, and additional materials that were associated with that. We actually found when we started digging into things, there were some existing leaks in the old building, so we went ahead and fixed them. We added some additional electronics to the boardroom so we could do some presentations in there remotely if we needed to in the future. We also had some added drainage work that needed to be done on the property, mainly on the easement. COVID delays. Initially, we lost a month and a half or a month plus. We also had to put a complete vapor barrier around the building during that time to protect what we'd done already. We've had some subcontractors that actually were associated with people who tested positive, so we had some supply and subcontractors that were quarantined for a bit that delayed work and delayed materials. Luckily, none of those people ended up being positive. We lost about 4 days total so far on weather. So going forward here, in January 4th, we'll have new carpet in. We'll have lights in the building by the end of December. On the 28th, we'll be able to start working on some of our IT stuff. And I'm hoping we'll do a final punch list around the second week in January. And we're hoping for a final completion sometime in February. So Will, I've got just a small group of pictures to show you. Will, you want to start out with those? Okay, here's kind of the front of the building, and I wanted you to see this because the storefront material is not in yet, but the wood along the left-hand side there is kind of what you'll see along with some of the work along towards where the doors will be when we get the storefront in. Okay, Will. Here's a shot of Kevin's new office. Nah, just kidding. This is actually right behind where the cashiers will be, and there's going to be about 14 people in there. On the left-hand wall, there'll be a number of offices. In the back, the hallway out to the cashiers, and over to the left of that will be the boardroom. Will? Here's kind of a shot of the back. We still have some work to do on the windows along there. Kevin's office is off to the left there, and then the windows you see across the front there will be some of the cubicles that will be facing out to the back parking lot and some of the asphalt work and a little bit of the landscaping that's in there. Okay. So just to the right of our existing bathroom facilities is another shot of the wood work that's going to be going on the front, which I think is going to be quite attractive. Will? I want you to see this. This is kind of the back patio along with the soffit, the woodwork there, and it's quite attractive. So I think when the building gets complete and we get everything in, it's going to look pretty nice. Okay, well. So we'll shift gears, I think, now and take a look at the feasibility study. I'll just say up front that the numbers came back at $11 million. And when Kevin said, how much is this going to cost? I could feel my vocal cords and lips freeze up. We're still in design development, and so we've got some
Hey,
steps
Don,
to take. Yes.
hate to interrupt you. Could you maybe give us a little more background again on this particular issue? So the other two commissioners, I follow Jeffcom and other things a little more. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to give a little bit of background.
Well, there's some discussions about everybody needing some additional space, and so there's some natural assumption of synergies that would play out between the PUD and emergency management and Jeffcom. And so we decided to launch out on a feasibility study that would take a look at what it would take to put a joint facility together. One of the things that I learned, quite frankly, quickly with this is that the building standards for emergency management in Jeffcom are just extremely high. In fact, if there's ever going to be a nuclear attack, that's where I want to hide. So that really did take the cost up considerably. So what we're looking at now, there's about 14,930 square feet total. In addition to the 3 agencies that would be in there, there's a lot of joint space for NPREP and JPREP and emergency coordination and all hands meetings and any other kind of community meetings. So it's a pretty nice space, but boy, the cost is pretty high. So we're in that process now of taking a relook at design development. What can we do to economize on what's there? And we're also looking at grant monies that could be associated with funding on both the emergency management side and for Jeffcom. And as soon as we get all those numbers together with a revised site plan and a revised floor plan, we'll come back to you and let you know what that looks like. Any other questions?
Yeah, Don, what's the total square footage of the proposed building?
14,930, and kind of a breakdown. The PUD would need about 2,740. Jeffcom had 3,590. Emergency management had, and the EOC would have 2,300, and the shared space is 6,300. And we allocated that, if you're associated with the cost per square foot, we associated that with each agency, and everybody would share in those costs.
So this is Dan. Kevin, question for Kevin. As we start to look into more at what the PUD's involvement in telecom may be, what purpose or advantage would this building serve along that line? Is there any connection between those two things?
For Jeffcom and the EOC, 310 Four Corners is our major hub. That's where all fiber, not only for the PUD, but for NOAANet, Wave, CenturyLink's not in there now, but they do have plans to go in there. So this would be ideal location. This is the new piece of property we bought at 300 Four Corners. It's just right next to our new building. So for communications, this would be awesome. It would tie together extremely well with being able to, if we lose the connection going over the bridge, we can reconfigure through the new BPA line, stuff like that. So for those reasons, the location makes very good sense.
Thanks. So is there any further presentation or?
No.
Okay, so do we have?
We'll come back to you with whatever we end up with on the feasibility.
Right. Thanks, Don. So are there any other questions from staff or commissioners? Not seeing any hands or hearing anyone speak up. So it looks like maybe we're done with item 4.2.
Yeah, thank you, Will, for helping me out.
I will say, when we first got the Don's going to say 11 million, I'm going to say 12 million, it's how you skin the cat. At that time, staff really was thinking we should back off. After spending a little bit of time talking to some other people, we do believe we should at least continue on a little bit further down this process. If we can get some of the grant process done, if we can do some of those things and make this come in this is something the community needs. EOC does not have a regularly room that they can regularly use all the time. They have to go to the fire station. Jeffcom is at the jail and they are bursting at the seams and have some real issues there. So, you know, in the last 2 weeks, I've kind of softened my approach and gone from just no way in heck to we should continue on. We should look at it. The answer may be no in the long run, but right now we need to, for the community, look at all of our options. So, and that's part of this discussion today is just so the commissioners can, you know, look at it, understand we're trying to do it not only for the PUD but for the community, and get a little at least a nod saying, okay, we understand and we should keep going forward because this is an expensive project.
So at a bare minimum, we should be looking at this for our needs for sure. You know, this should be a scalable or a modular type of a project. I realize, having said that, you know, the geological issues concerned with what Don was talking about for particularly the EOC are an issue that we don't necessarily need to deal with ourselves, but I don't know how widespread that footprint goes if we start to build on it, how it would affect future build out for the other entities. So, you know, having said that, my question is, for the PUD purposes of what we need to do, what kind of a footprint and cost are we looking at there? Do we have any idea about that?
Not at, oh, okay.
Well, it was a little over $2 million, I believe. Let me take a look here. Yeah, the PUD's portion of this, if we did a joint facility, would be 3 million, 5 or 6. The Jeffcom would be 4 million 2, and the emergency management would be 3 million 2, and that includes sharing the cost of the joint space. Now that's where we're at right now. I mean, we're going to do you know, one of the things you do after design development is you come back after everybody's put their wish list in, you drop to your knees on the cost, you get back up and you refine your pencil and you try to see what you can do. So we'll do that. But in addition, as Kevin had mentioned, we'll also take a look at any associated grant opportunities we might have for both emergency management and Jeffcom to factor into a final number here. There's no doubt that Jeffcom and emergency management are going to have to do something. I mean, those spaces are just terrible. You got to pin your ears back and grease your behind to get into them. So they're going to have to do something within the next year or two anyway. So maybe the motivation is a little higher on them looking at opportunities to make this work. But we'll see. You know, we'll step through the steps necessary to get a final word on this.
What would be the functional use of our portion of the proposed building?
Well, mainly, you know, you've got your system operations piece. There'll be a meter room and there'll be some engineers in there, I think. But the main thing is, you know, you want your system operators in a secure location separate from the rest of the organization so they can function that way, not only on a day-to-day basis, but in particular when there's emergencies. And that kind of feeds into the synergies that you would have between 911 and emergency management during storm activity. You're all communicating back and forth anyway, and there's some natural operational synergies you get by being in close proximity to one another.
So can it be our dispatch center would be in there, SCADA, those type of facilities would be in that building?
So I would add one more question to that then, as far as space due to COVID now, assuming that, you know, we need to, this is the new normal to maintain spacing and have, you know, more ability to spread people out, looking into the crystal ball, looking into the future. We now have the new building will be coming online. We still have some rental properties. You know, how does this play in the sense of having the right amount of space? What's our timeline? Is this something that does look imminent or critical?
I'll start, Don. the new building we just built was pre-COVID. We had people really close together. We had a very open concept. And with COVID, you're not allowed to do what we built. Now, hopefully COVID in 2021 goes away with the vaccinations and stuff like that. But as many other businesses are doing, we're looking at keeping people working from home, not bringing in as many people in the open areas. The cubicles have to be kind of relooked at. So instead of getting 2 people back to back, you're maybe only going to get 1. Is this a crucial time frame that we have to make a decision today, Dan? No. We feel we have plenty of time. We have options. But where we have time, I'm not sure Jeff Com and EOC has time to wait a real long time. So it would be nice to have the space. Eventually, we will need the space as we continue to grow. If we expand the broadband, that would require us to have more space, and this space could be utilized for that process.
Thanks, Kevin. So I guess, is there anything further on 4.2, the new building construction and the joint building proposal that we've been talking about? Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing and hearing none, we will move on. So we have roughly an hour still scheduled to go to executive session. I assume we want to do that.
Commissioner Collins had a previous engagement. I'm not sure the time frame. We felt we actually ran a little bit longer in the discussions than I thought we would. So
Yeah, sorry about that.
I will leave it up to Commissioner Collins. I'm not sure he can stay. I don't know. I don't know the schedule.
So I have a hard stop at 11.
Oh, okay. All right, so do we want to try real quick to set another date, or are we just going to leave it to staff, commissioners?
Well, we've got an hour here.
We're losing Commissioner. Oh, Commissioner Collins said 11. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking we
keep
were
going.
losing him in
Yeah.
2. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff. Did you say? Go ahead,
Sorry.
Jeff.
I'm in favor of let's proceed. Let's use our time since we're all here.
Yeah, I am too. I was thinking we had 2 minutes left with Commissioner Collins. Sorry. Yeah, I say we proceed.
I'll give you at least 2 minutes.
Well, you'll probably get to start us off. All right, so we're going to be doing the executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 parentheses 1 parentheses G to evaluate and review the performance of a public employee. How long do we believe we'll need for this? A whole hour? Should we schedule the hour?
Dan, just for everybody's benefit, could we say 45 minutes and that gets Commissioner Collins? We're not going to run over. And
that works for me. That'll put us at 10:45. So coming back out, does that work?
Works for me. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, Will, if you want to start putting everybody into, the antechamber or whatever, chat room, whatever we're going to call it, and put us into executive session once you've done that.
Okay, if all staff members could log out and anybody else that wants to remain, I'm going to put you in the lobby. Pausing the recording now. Recording again. The only person that was in the lab was Cammie, and she's gone.
Okay. Well, this is Dan Tupper, president of the board. We're coming out of the executive session. It is 10:45. Is there any action to be taken? Not seeing any heads nodding or thumbs up for action. So with that, that puts us back to on our agenda to complete today's business. Adjournment is left. I do have one point of business to put out there, just point of information, and that's that the PIF board didn't meet. The PDA, maybe you all saw, the PDA withdrew their request on what they were going to propose. So I just want to give you that point of information. It's not like we have to discuss it or anything. I just want to give you that point of information. So anything else for the good of the order? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, for the good of the order, since I lost you guys audio-wise, what was the final action on the county easement property swap? What did we do there?
Staff is going to continue going down the path of negotiating on that, and legal is going to work with staff, it sounds like, to address a few concerns or issues on what the contracts would look like.
Very good. Thank you for the update, and thanks for a great meeting, everybody. And is this the last meeting of the year for us, formally?
I see a thumbs up, but I don't believe it. I see a thumbs up, but I don't believe it, so.
Okay, well, thank you, guys. I feel like we've been rode pretty hard this week, so it's been a pleasure. Great year.
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so-
Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas,
holidays.
everyone.
I see Cammie is back, so it's
Great team.
10:46. It's 10:46. Is there anything else for the good of the order? I guess Cammie's good. So with that, I will put us into adjournment. Thanks, everybody. Have a good holiday.
Thank you. Cammie, have a good holiday.
Mhm.
Okay. Good holiday, everybody.
See y'all later.